Hey, let me tell you about something terrifying that happened to my friend Sarah during her road trip through Texas. You know those long, empty highways that seem to stretch on forever?
Yeah, that's where this nightmare began.
Sarah was driving from Houston to El Paso, a trip she'd planned for weeks. Everything was going fine until sunset when her GPS started acting weird. First, it told her to take some back roads she'd never heard of. Then it just died. Complete silence. The kind that makes your skin crawl. The sky was getting darker by the minute, and those friendly Texas highways started feeling less friendly. You know that feeling when you're alone on a road, and every set of headlights in your rearview mirror makes your heart skip a beat? Sarah was living that nightmare. After hours of driving in circles, she spotted this old motel sign flickering in the distance. The Lone Star Motel. Not exactly the Hilton, but when you're lost in the middle of nowhere, any bed looks like heaven. The parking lot was almost empty. Just a couple of beat-up trucks and this weird van with tinted windows. The night clerk barely looked up when she checked in. Just handed her a key to room 13, because of course it had to be room 13. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cheap air freshener, but Sarah was too tired to care. That's when things got really creepy. She started noticing little things, like how the footsteps in the hallway would stop right outside her door, or how she kept seeing shadows move under the door crack. At one point, she swore she heard someone trying to turn her doorknob. The motel room phone rang at 2 a.m. When she answered, there was just heavy breathing on the other end. But here's the thing. When she called the front desk to complain, they told her something that made her blood run cold. The room phones had been disconnected for years. Sarah spent the rest of the night wide awake, her car keys clutched in one hand, her phone in the other. The sun couldn't rise fast enough. When it finally did, she ran to her car, not even bothering to check out. As she peeled out of the parking lot, she glanced in her rearview mirror. The Lone Star Motel looked completely abandoned, like it had been for years. The windows were boarded up, and the sign was so faded you could barely read it. To this day, Sarah can't explain what happened that night. She's tried looking up the motel, but it's like it never existed. Sometimes when she's driving at night, she still checks her rearview mirror, just to make sure she's really alone on the road. But in Texas, on those long, dark highways, can you ever really be sure? Let me tell you about the most terrifying night I spent alone in my house. I never believed in supernatural stuff, but what happened that evening changed everything. My parents were away for the weekend, and being 17, I was totally cool with having the house to myself. The first few hours were great, you know, the usual teen freedom stuff. But as night fell, things started getting weird. It began with subtle sounds, like footsteps upstairs when I was watching TV in the living room. At first, I brushed it off as the house settling. Old houses make noise, right? But then came the distinct sound of a door creaking open upstairs. My heart started racing. I tried calling my best friend, but of course, no signal. Isn't that how these stories always go? The power was still on, thank goodness, but that almost made it worse because the shadows seemed to move in the lamplight. Then I heard it, the sound of children laughing. But here's the thing. We don't have any neighbors with kids, and it was nearly midnight. The laughter seemed to be coming from my parents' bedroom upstairs. I grabbed the closest thing I could find as a weapon, a baseball bat, and slowly made my way upstairs. Each step felt like an eternity. The wooden stairs creaked beneath my feet, and the laughter stopped abruptly. When I reached my parents' room, the door was wide open, though I distinctly remembered closing it earlier. The window was open too, curtains billowing in the wind. But what made my blood run cold was the wet footprints on the carpet, small, like a child's, leading from the window to under the bed. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Then my phone suddenly rang, making me jump out of my skin. It was my mom checking in on me. As I answered, I heard movement under the bed. But when I finally gathered the courage to look, there was nothing there. The footprints had vanished too. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. My parents don't believe me, of course, but whenever I'm home alone now, I always make sure to lock every window, close every door, and never, ever go upstairs after dark. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I still think I hear that children's laughter echoing through the house. Maybe some things are better left unexplained.
Picture this. A town where streets lead to nowhere, houses stand empty, and time seems frozen. Welcome to nowhere. At least that's what we'll call it, because officially this town doesn't exist. You might be wondering, how can a town simply not exist? Well, let me take you on a fascinating journey into one of the most intriguing urban mysteries of our time. Imagine walking down a perfectly paved street. There are traffic lights, park benches, and even a small coffee shop on the corner. But something feels off. The coffee shop's windows never light up. The traffic lights change their colors in an endless loop for cars that never come. And those park benches? They've never felt the weight of a single person. This isn't the beginning of a horror story. It's actually a reality in several places around the world. These are towns that appear on no official maps, have no registered population, and technically speaking, don't exist in any government database. Some of these places were born from military exercises, created as elaborate training grounds for urban warfare. Others emerged as test sites for new technologies, where companies could experiment with smart city systems without affecting real populations. And then there are those built as emergency response training facilities, where first responders can practice handling disasters in a controlled environment. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these non-existent towns is how they challenge our very understanding of what makes a place real. Is it the people, the buildings, the official paperwork? Or is it something more intangible? The stories, memories, and experiences that give a place its soul? Think about it. If you were to visit one of these towns, walking its empty streets, peering into its vacant buildings, would it feel any less real than any other place you've been? The concrete beneath your feet would be just as solid, the buildings just as tangible. But something essential would be missing: the human element that transforms a collection of structures into a living, breathing community. These ghost towns serve as a reminder that our world isn't just made up of what we can see on maps or find in official records. Sometimes the most interesting places are the ones that, officially speaking, don't exist at all. So next time you're driving down an unfamiliar road and come across a town that seems a little too quiet, a little too perfect, maybe, just maybe, you've stumbled upon one of these places that don't exist. But remember, just because something isn't official doesn't mean it isn't real. After all, reality is often stranger than fiction.
Have you ever felt that eerie sensation of being watched? That inexplicable feeling when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, but when you turn around, there's nothing there? Well, let me tell you a story that might make you think twice about those moments. It started on a perfectly normal Tuesday evening. I was doing what I always do, scrolling through my phone, completely absorbed in the endless stream of content. That's when I first noticed it. In the reflection of my screen, there was this shape, just at the edge of my vision. Dark, formless, but somehow alive. I thought I was just tired, you know? We all see things when we're exhausted. But then it started happening more frequently. In store windows, in puddles after rain, in the rearview mirror of my car. Always watching, always there, but never quite visible when I tried to look at it directly. The strangest part, it seemed to react to my social media activity. Every time I liked a post, every time I followed someone new, it grew more present, more defined, as if each digital interaction was feeding it, making it stronger. I started documenting everything, taking photos, making videos, trying to capture whatever this thing was. And here's where it gets really interesting. It never showed up in any of my recordings, except for one, a single frame in a video I posted last week. There it was, clear as day, looking right at the camera, looking at you. So here's the thing, I need your help. Like and follow this account. Not for the usual reasons, not for the numbers or the algorithm, but because every new follower helps me see it better. Helps me understand what it wants. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to see it too. Because trust me, it's not just watching me anymore. It's watching all of us. And it's waiting for you to notice it too. Hey there, fellow horror fans. Before I share this bone-chilling story that still haunts me to this day, make sure to follow me for more terrifying tales that'll keep you up at night. Now, let me take you back to a crisp autumn evening when everything I thought I knew about reality was shattered. I was driving home from college through a remote stretch of forest when my car suddenly broke down. The sun was setting, painting the sky in eerie shades of orange and purple. With no cell service in the nearest town miles away, I had no choice but to walk. That's when I first saw her, a little girl in a white dress standing motionless among the trees. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. My first instinct was concern. What was a child doing alone in the woods at dusk? "Hey, are you okay?" I called out. She didn't respond, but slowly turned her head toward me. Something felt wrong. Her movements were too rigid, too mechanical. I started walking closer, but with each step I took, my chest got tighter. The temperature seemed to drop dramatically. The girl's face was hidden in shadow, but I could have sworn I saw a faint smile spreading across her features, too wide to be natural. Suddenly she disappeared, just vanished into thin air. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. That's when I heard giggling behind me. I spun around and there she was, much closer now. Close enough to see that her eyes were completely black, like empty sockets. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. Behind me, I could hear her laughter echoing through the trees, getting closer and closer. The sound seemed to come from all directions at once. Just when I thought my lungs would burst, I saw headlights approaching. A truck driver had spotted me and pulled over. When I looked back, the girl was gone, but something else caught my eye. A small weathered cross by the roadside, decorated with faded plastic flowers, and a photo of a little girl in a white dress. The truck driver later told me about an accident that happened there 20 years ago. A young girl had wandered into the road and, well, you can guess the rest. To this day, whenever I drive past that stretch of woods, I keep my eyes straight ahead. But sometimes in my rearview mirror, I catch a glimpse of a small figure in white standing among the trees, waiting for her next victim. Remember to like and follow for more horrifying true stories. And whatever you do, if you're ever driving through those woods at dusk, don't stop for anyone, especially not for a little girl in a white dress. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next spine-chilling tale. Picture this. You're driving down a dark, empty highway at midnight. The only light comes from your headlights and the occasional flicker of stars above. Your phone's almost dead and the radio's been playing nothing but static for the last hour. I'm about to tell you about what happened to Sarah during what was supposed to be a simple 6-hour drive to visit her grandmother. What she encountered that night would haunt her for years to come. It started normally enough. Sarah left her apartment in Boston around 8 p.m., thinking she'd arrive by 2 a.m. The first 2 hours were uneventful, just her, some podcasts, and the gentle hum of her trusty Honda Civic. Then things got weird. She noticed a pair of headlights in her rearview mirror. Nothing unusual about that, except these lights had been maintaining the exact same distance for over an hour. No matter if she sped up or slowed down, they stayed perfectly fixed behind her. Around midnight, her car started making strange noises. You know that sinking feeling when something's not right with your vehicle? Sarah pulled over at the next exit, which led to a small gas station. The lights were on, but something felt off. The place looked frozen in time, like it hadn't been touched since the 1970s. As she stepped out of her car, the vehicle that had been following her drove past slowly. Very slowly. Sarah caught a glimpse inside, but there was no driver. The car was completely empty. Her hands trembling, she rushed inside the gas station. The bell above the door chimed, but no one was there. Just rows of dusty shelves and a flickering fluorescent light. On the counter was a single newspaper. The date? October 15th, 1973. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. But when she turned around, well, I don't want to spoil the ending just yet. If you want to hear what happened next to Sarah at that mysterious gas station, make sure to like and follow for part 2 of this story. Trust me, what happens next will make you think twice about taking late-night road trips alone. Sometimes the scariest stories aren't about ghosts or monsters. They're about those moments when reality itself seems to bend, when the familiar becomes strange, and when you realize you're all alone in a situation that shouldn't be possible. Don't forget to like and follow us for more chilling stories like Sarah's. And remember, next time you're driving alone at night and see something unusual in your rearview mirror, maybe it's best not to pull over. Hey guys, gather round because I've got a spine-chilling holiday story that'll make you think twice about your next vacation. You know those perfect getaway plans we all make? Well, let me tell you about the time my dream vacation turned into an absolute nightmare. It all started last December. I had booked this supposedly charming cabin in the mountains. You know, one of those picturesque spots you see all over Instagram. Everything looked perfect in the photos. Snow-covered pine trees, a cozy fireplace, the works. The drive up was already giving me weird vibes. The GPS kept losing signal, and the roads got narrower and darker as we climbed higher into the mountains. But I brushed it off. That's part of the adventure, right? When we finally arrived, something felt off. The cabin looked nothing like the photos. The windows were grimy, there were strange scratches on the door, and the whole place had this eerie silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But here's where it gets really weird. That first night, we started hearing these sounds. Not your usual cabin in the woods creaks and groans. No, these were like footsteps above us, which made no sense because we were on the top floor. The power went out around midnight. No big deal, right? Except when I used my phone's flashlight to look around, I swear I saw shadows moving against the walls. Shadows that shouldn't have been there. Then we found the diary, hidden behind a loose board in the bedroom wall. The entries from previous guests. Let's just say they describe things that still give me nightmares. Day 2 was when things got really intense. We discovered why the cabin was so cheap during peak season. But you know what? I think I'll save that part of the story for next time because it's seriously the most terrifying part. If you want to hear what happened next, and trust me, it gets way crazier, make sure to like and follow. And hey, share your own holiday horror stories in the comments below. I know I'm not the only one with a vacation gone wrong story. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened, and this one, well, let's just say I haven't booked a remote cabin since. Oh, and before I go, sweet dreams, and maybe double check those vacation rental reviews next time. You never know what's waiting for you in those 5-star cozy getaways. Hey guys, I'm about to share a terrifying kidnapping story that happened to my friend Sarah. But before I dive in, make sure to like and follow because, trust me, you won't want to miss my future stories. So Sarah was walking home from her late night shift at the diner. It was around 11 p.m. and the streets were eerily quiet. You know that feeling when the air just feels different? That's exactly how she described it. She noticed this beat-up white van had been following her for a few blocks. At first, she tried to convince herself she was being paranoid, but every turn she took, there it was in her peripheral vision. Her apartment was still 10 minutes away, so she ducked into a 24-hour convenience store thinking the van would pass. The store clerk, an older man named Mike, could tell something was wrong. Sarah explained the situation, her hands trembling as she spoke. Mike immediately locked the front door and called the police. But here's where it gets even creepier. While they were waiting, they watched through the store windows as the van slowly circled the block. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. When the police finally arrived, they found the van parked in the alley behind the store. Inside, they discovered rope, duct tape, and detailed maps of the area with several routes marked in red. But the driver was gone. The really chilling part? They found a notebook with information about several local women's routines, including Sarah's work schedule and usual route home. She hadn't been randomly targeted, she'd been studied. The police never caught the guy, but they linked the van to 3 unsolved disappearances in neighboring towns. Sarah was lucky that night. Her instincts and quick thinking saved her life. She moved away shortly after, but to this day she never walks alone at night and always varies her route home. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that remind us how close we can come to becoming another statistic. Remember guys, always trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in my next video. Hey there, let me tell you about something truly terrifying that happened to me at a gas station in Texas late one night. You know those moments when the hair on the back of your neck stands up and your gut tells you something isn't right? Yeah, this was one of those times. I was driving through West Texas, somewhere between El Paso and San Antonio. It was around 2 a.m. and my gas tank was running on fumes. The only station for miles was this old rundown place with flickering fluorescent lights that barely cut through the darkness. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed there wasn't another car in sight. Just the soft hum of the ancient refrigerators inside the convenience store and this weird rhythmic tapping sound I couldn't quite place. The credit card reader at the pump wasn't working, so I had to go inside. The door chime echoed through the empty store. Behind the counter was this older man, completely still staring straight ahead. I said hello, but he didn't respond or move, not even a blink. When I got closer, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. His reflection in the security mirror behind him. It wasn't matching his movements. While he was completely still, his reflection was smiling and slowly turning its head. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I heard that tapping sound again, louder this time, coming from the back room. And then, multiple shadows started moving across the walls, but there was nobody there casting them. I've never run so fast in my life. I jumped in my car and floored it, empty tank be damned. Later, I looked up that gas station online. Turns out it had burned down 3 years ago. The site was just an empty lot. To this day, I can't explain what I saw that night. Whenever I drive through Texas now, I make sure my tank is full before sunset. And I never ever stop at gas stations alone after midnight. If you want to hear more true scary stories like this one, make sure to like and follow. Trust me, I've got plenty more that'll keep you up at night. Stay safe out there, and remember, sometimes the scariest things happen in the most ordinary places. Hey guys, I need to tell you about something terrifying that happened to me last night. Before I get into it, make sure to like and follow, because this is a story you won't want to miss. I was home alone just like any other Tuesday night. My parents were out of town for the week, and my sister was at her friend's place. You know that feeling when the house just feels
Different when you're by yourself?
every creak, every tiny noise seems amplified. I was in my room scrolling through my phone when I heard what sounded like scratching at the back door. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or maybe a branch scraping against the house. But then the scratching turned into a distinct clicking sound, like someone was trying to pick the lock. My heart started racing. I quickly turned off all the lights in my room and grabbed my phone. The house was pitch black, except for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the windows. That's when I heard it, footsteps on the back porch. I crawled under my bed, trying to control my breathing. The footsteps got closer to the back door, and then I heard the handle jiggle. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely type 911 into my phone. Just as I was about to hit call, I heard voices, multiple voices, whispering outside. Then something unexpected happened. A flashlight beam swept across my window, but it wasn't coming from the intruders. It was the police. Apparently, my next-door neighbor had spotted suspicious activity and called them before I even had the chance. The would-be burglars must have heard the police cars because they took off running. The officers found fresh footprints in the flower bed and clear evidence that someone had been trying to break in. They told me later that there had been a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, targeting houses where people were home alone. I couldn't sleep for days after that. I installed security cameras, got a dog, and never stay home alone without having all the doors double-checked anymore. But you know what's the scariest part? The police never caught them. Sometimes I still wonder if they're out there waiting for another opportunity. Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything similar. Stay safe out there, guys. And remember, always trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Hey there, fellow horror enthusiasts. Grab your blankets and dim those lights, because I'm about to share a chilling experience that still haunts me to this day. It was one of those brutally cold winter nights. You know the kind, where the wind howls like a wounded animal and the temperature drops so low that your breath creates little clouds of frost in the air. I was home alone as my parents had gone to visit my sick grandmother 2 states away. The house was an old Victorian-style building, beautiful but full of those weird creaks and groans that old houses tend to make. Usually I'd gotten used to these sounds, but that night something felt different. I was curled up on the couch, binge-watching my favorite show, when I first heard it. Footsteps in the snow outside. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They were slow, deliberate, circling the house. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the neighbor's cat or branches swaying in the wind. But then the footsteps stopped. Right outside my living room window. I held my breath, trying to stay absolutely still. The curtains were drawn, but I could see a shadow, a dark silhouette standing there, motionless. Minutes passed, or maybe it was hours, I couldn't tell anymore. Then came the sound that makes my blood run cold even today. The slow testing turn of the back door handle. I hadn't double-checked the locks that night. My heart nearly stopped. The handle turned completely, and the door began to creak open. I was frozen in terror, my phone just out of reach on the coffee table. The gap in the doorway grew wider and wider, revealing, but you know what? I think I'll save that part of the story for next time. This memory still shakes me to my core, and I need a moment to collect myself. If you want to know what happened next, make sure to like and follow for more scary stories. Trust me, what came through that door that night? Well, let's just say it changed my life forever. And hey, while you're waiting for part 2, maybe double check your locks tonight. You never know who or what might be circling your house in the darkness. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the most terrifying stories are the ones that really happened. I'll see you in the next video, if I survive long enough to tell it. Hey there, I want to share a bone-chilling experience that happened to me at a gas station last winter. Before I dive in, make sure to follow along because I post stories like this every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. It was around 11 p.m., and I was driving back from visiting my sister in a small town about 3 hours from home. The roads were empty and my gas light had just come on. I pulled into this old, dimly lit gas station in the middle of nowhere. You know the type, with flickering fluorescent lights and a convenience store that looks like it hasn't been updated since the 80s. As I was pumping gas, I noticed there wasn't another soul in sight, not even an attendant visible through the store windows. The only sounds were the quiet hum of the pump and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees behind the station. That's when I started feeling uneasy. You know that sensation when the hair on the back of your neck stands up? Yeah, that one. I glanced at my rearview mirror and noticed a beat-up van had pulled up silently behind my car, but its headlights were off. I hadn't even heard it arrive. I tried to keep calm, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But then I saw movement in the van's side mirror. Someone was definitely in there watching me. I could make out a silhouette shifting in the darkness. My hands were shaking as I finished pumping, trying to act normal. Just as I was about to replace the nozzle, the van's door slowly started to slide open. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I jumped into my car, leaving the gas cap open, and floored it out of there. In my rearview mirror, I saw a figure standing in the station's dim light, just watching me leave. When I called the police later, they told me something that still gives me chills. They'd received multiple reports of attempted abductions at that same gas station over the past few months. I later learned that stretch of highway was notorious for trafficking incidents, and that gas station was a known hotspot. Now, whenever I have to drive at night, I make sure my tank is full before sunset, and I never ever stop at remote gas stations alone. Remember to always trust your instincts and stay aware of your surroundings. Sometimes that gut feeling is the only warning you get. Drop a comment if you've ever had a scary experience at a gas station. I know I can't be the only one with stories like this. And hey, if you want to hear more real-life horror stories like this one, make sure to hit that follow button. Stay safe out there, everyone. Picture this: a dark, stormy night, and I'm sitting here alone in my apartment sharing a story that still sends chills down my spine. But before I dive in, make sure you like and follow, because what I'm about to tell you, well, let's just say you won't want to miss what happens next. It started 3 months ago. I just moved into this old Victorian building downtown. You know, the kind with creaky floorboards and those vintage brass doorknobs that reflect the moonlight in an eerily perfect way. The rent was suspiciously cheap, but being fresh out of college with student loans breathing down my neck, I wasn't about to question my luck. The first few nights were normal enough. Sure, there was the occasional pipe groan or window rattle, but that's just old building charm, right? But then I started noticing something peculiar. Every night at exactly 3:27 a.m., my phone would light up with a text. But they kept coming, and then the dots started appearing elsewhere. In the steam on my bathroom mirror after a shower, in the coffee grounds at the bottom of my morning cup, in the dust on my windowsill. Last week, I finally worked up the courage to ask my elderly neighbor about the building's history. Her face went pale. She told me about Sarah, a young woman who lived in my exact apartment in the 1960s. She was a telegraph operator who mysteriously disappeared one night, leaving behind only 3 dots in Morse code, tapping endlessly on her machine. But here's the truly terrifying part, and I swear this is real. While I'm recording this right now, looking at my phone's screen, those 3 dots just appeared in my notes app. They're moving, like someone's typing down sound of phone dropping. I have to go, but if you want to hear what happens next, and trust me, it gets so much worse, make sure you follow me. Because Sarah, she isn't just a story anymore. And those 3 dots, they're just the beginning. Remember, like and follow if you want to hear the rest. Though I can't promise I'll be around to tell it. Whispered. They're here. Picture this. It's a crisp autumn evening, and I'm about to share a story that still sends chills down my spine. But before I dive in, make sure you're following for more terrifying tales like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Last October, my friends and I decided to rent this old cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains. You know the type: creaky floorboards, musty air, and windows that never seem to keep the darkness out quite right. The owner had given us an oddly specific warning: never open the basement door after sunset. Of course, we laughed it off. Who takes those kinds of warnings seriously anymore? The first 2 days were perfect. Hiking, telling stories around the fire pit, exactly what you'd expect from a cabin getaway. But on the 3rd night, things changed. We started hearing this faint humming coming from beneath the floorboards. At first, it was barely noticeable, like the distant buzz of power lines. But it grew louder, more rhythmic, almost like singing. Sarah, always the curious one, suggested we check the basement. I reminded everyone about the warning, but you know how these things go. Curiosity always wins. As we approached the basement door, the temperature dropped so suddenly we could see our breath. The moment we turned the handle, every light in the cabin went out. Complete darkness. Then we heard it, the sound of something moving up the basement stairs. Not footsteps exactly, more like something being dragged. We ran, all of us, straight out into the pitch-black forest. When we finally made it back to our cars, Sarah was missing. We called the police, launched a search party, the whole 9 yards. They found her 3 days later, walking along the highway 20 miles away. Here's the thing, though. Sarah doesn't remember anything from that night, nothing at all. But sometimes when we're together, I catch her humming this strange, familiar tune. the same one we heard coming from that basement. To this day, I keep wondering about what really happened in that cabin. The owner has since taken down the listing, and no one's been allowed to rent it since. Some locals say they still hear singing coming from those woods on particularly dark nights. If you want to hear what happened when I went back to investigate 6 months later, make sure you're following. That story, well, that's even more terrifying than this one. Remember, folks, sometimes those old warnings exist for a reason. Stay safe out there and never ever open a basement door after dark. Let me tell you about something that happened to me last week, an experience that still keeps me up at night. I was house-sitting for my aunt in her century-old Victorian home, the kind with creaking floorboards and shadows that seem to move when you're not looking directly at them. Everything was fine for the first few days. I'd spend my time working remotely, watching Netflix, and occasionally checking on my aunt's ancient cat, Whiskers. But on the fourth night, something changed. I was about to head to bed when I heard Whiskers hissing aggressively from the basement, something I'd never heard him do before. Concerned, I grabbed my phone's flashlight and headed down the creaky wooden stairs. When I reached the bottom, I called out for Whiskers, but there was only silence. The beam from my flashlight swept across old furniture and dusty boxes until it landed on something that made my blood run cold. There in the corner was Whiskers, standing completely still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling above me. Slowly, reluctantly, I lifted my flashlight upward. What I saw? I still can't fully process it. A dark figure was clinging to the basement ceiling, its head twisted at an impossible angle to stare directly at me. Its mouth, if you could call it that, spread into a smile that stretched far too wide for any human face. I don't remember running up the stairs. I don't remember calling the police. I just remember finding myself outside the house, shaking, as 3 patrol cars pulled up. When they searched the house, they found nothing unusual, except for one detail that still haunts me. On the basement ceiling, exactly where I'd seen the figure, they found handprints. Not normal handprints, mind you, but ones that seemed to have been burned into the concrete, each finger unnaturally long and twisted. The police filed their report as unexplained activity, but I know what I saw. My aunt moved out the following week, and the house remains empty to this day. Sometimes when I drive past it at night, I swear I can see something moving in the basement windows, that same impossible smile gleaming in the darkness. Before I go, I want to thank you all for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more terrifying tales from my life, make sure to like and follow. Trust me, this is just the beginning of the strange and horrifying things I've experienced. And remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't what lurk in the darkness, but what lurks right above you, waiting for you to look up. Let me tell you about something that happened to me last week, an experience that still keeps me up at night. Before I dive in, make sure you follow and like for more creepy stories like this one. I live alone in an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. It's the kind of place that makes strange noises at night, but you get used to them. Or at least that's what I thought. Last Tuesday, I was working late in my home office when I heard footsteps upstairs. At first I dismissed it. Old houses make sounds, right? But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. The distinct sound of humming. A childhood lullaby my mother used to sing to me. The footsteps started moving toward the stairs. Thump, thump. Thump each step closer, the humming becoming clearer. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. That's when I noticed something even more terrifying. In the reflection of my computer screen, I could see my door slowly opening behind me. The humming was right behind me now. I could feel cold breath on my neck. Then a whisper, "Sweet dreams, darling." I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just an empty doorway and the faint scent of my mother's perfume lingering in the air. The next morning, I found something on my pillow, a single strand of gray hair exactly like my mother's. I've slept with the lights on ever since, but every night, just as I'm about to drift off, I hear that familiar lullaby starting again. Some say our loved ones watch over us after they're gone, but sometimes I wonder, are they watching over us or are they watching us? Don't forget to follow and like for more true horror stories like this one. And remember, maybe that creak you hear in your house tonight isn't just your imagination after all. Sleep tight if you can. Hey there, fellow horror enthusiasts. Gather round because I've got a story that'll make your skin crawl. But before I begin, here's a little warning. What I'm about to share with you, well, it happened to me just last week and I still can't sleep properly. It was a typical Wednesday night.
You know the kind, when you're home alone, scrolling through your phone, and the house is just a little too quiet.
I was about to head to bed when I got a notification. Someone had liked one of my really old posts from exactly 1 year ago. Weird, right? But what was weirder was that it was a photo I never remembered posting. The photo showed me sleeping in my bed. Same bedroom, same sheets I had right now. But I live alone. I've always lived alone. I frantically checked the timestamp, 27 a.m. Then I checked the current time, 3:26 a.m. My hand started shaking as I heard footsteps upstairs. The creaking of someone walking across my bedroom floor. The sound of my bedroom window slowly sliding open. Click. That was the sound of a camera shutter. The notification popped up on my phone. Your photo has been posted. I'm sharing this with you now because, well, I just got another notification. Someone's liking my posts again. Old ones, photos I never took. But this time, they're from inside your house, right now. Maybe you should check your recently posted photos. But before you do, make sure to like and follow. Because trust me, you'll want to stay updated, especially about what's behind you right now. Whispers. Don't turn around. They don't like it when you see them before they're ready to take the picture. And remember, some stories aren't just stories. Some likes aren't just likes, and sometimes followers, well, they follow you in more ways than one. Sleep tight if you can. Hey there, fellow horror enthusiasts. Gather round because I'm about to share a story that still keeps me up at night. Before I begin, make sure you're somewhere safe and comfortable. You might need it. And hey, if you enjoy a good scare, don't forget to like and follow for more spine-chilling tales. Now, let me tell you about what happened at my grandparents' farm last summer. It's been in our family for generations, one of those picturesque places with rolling fields and an old red barn. But there's something about it that's different after sunset. It started with the chickens. They usually make noise throughout the day, but one morning they were dead silent. When I went to check on them, every single one was huddled in the corner, trembling. Their feed was untouched, which was unusual. That night I heard scratching sounds coming from the barn. Now, we're used to raccoons and other critters, but this was different. It sounded like something much larger, and it was rhythmic, almost deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out, despite every fiber of my being screaming at me to stay inside. The closer I got to the barn, the colder it became. It was middle of summer, but I could see my breath. The scratching got louder, and when I reached for the barn door, it suddenly stopped. Complete silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. I pulled the door open, and the beam of my flashlight caught something that made my blood freeze. There in the corner was a figure hunched over our old tractor. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. And when it turned, But you know what? I think I'll save that part of the story for next time. The nightmares that followed, what we found in the barn the next day, and why my grandparents never go near that barn anymore. That's a whole other chapter of this nightmare. If you want to hear the rest of what happened at the farm, and trust me, it gets much worse, make sure you're following me, because some stories are better told in parts, especially when they're true. Sweet dreams, everyone, if you can still sleep after this. Remember, there's a reason why some farms are abandoned, and sometimes the silence of the countryside isn't peaceful. It's terrifying.